Folks whose long-term relationships or marriages ended, what surprised you the most about suddenly navigating life as a single person again? This is my perspective from the flip side of a similar relationship statement as the guy. This is something I think my ex-wife would have said, but it's also something I tried multiple times to convince her that she could do. I think I would describe it as she had convinced herself she needed me to do those things. After we divorced, she bought a house and sent me an email that said, "You'd have been proud of me. I did set up the Wi-Fi." I read the email and it felt heartbreaking that after all of that, she still hadn't taken that step. I completely ignored everything else in the email, and my entire email response was, "I don't know if you realize this, but as someone who knows you probably better than anyone else, you sell yourself short a lot more than you should. I never married a stupid or incapable woman. I married a fully capable woman who had everything in her already to succeed and excel. You're hardworking, smart, and way more capable than you realize. And the sooner you accept that as truth, the better off your life will be. You can do way more than what you think you can. And you've known this all along." That was one of the biggest, most hurtful realizations I had while we were together. She had to lose everything in order to gain everything. Sometimes the right thing to do when you love someone is to let them go. She's doing much better now. There are many, many reasons we can never be friends, but I am proud of the person she is today, because she's the person today that I knew she could always be. I don't know how much that applies to your situation, but I think the bolded part is something we all could hear more often. I'm convinced many men are the same way around household tasks. Wife feels taken for granted because it never occurs to him that he can do dishes or change diapers. Story 2. I was intimidated by the thought of being a single mom, and I was surprised by how easy it was. I'd been married for 16 years and had a kid. My ex took her for weekends and one night a week. Previously, I might have an hour a week to myself if I was lucky. I started on creative ventures such as writing, which I had never done much before, and discovered I really enjoyed it. My house was so clean and so easy to keep clean. I decluttered with abandon, including cleaning the moldy box collection out of my basement. I had more money. I didn't receive child support, but I had one less non-working adult to provide for. Making decisions for myself, by myself, was lovely. The year I spent alone was the best of my life. Dating. I had been with my first husband when I was 22, the first serious relationship. Going on my second first date at age 36 was intimidating. I didn't go to churches or bars, so I tried internet dating. I did not understand the prevalence of casual intimacy. It's laughable, really. I'm married again and have been for 8 years. It keeps getting better. My ex was not a good long-term match for a husband, but he's a really good ex-husband and father, and we're still good friends. Story 3. I don't have to ask anyone for permission or consent about anything from what's on the grocery list to what fabric softener we can use. If I want to order a pizza and salad every Friday night to celebrate the end of the work week, I can, and I will. I have double the amount of money and can actually save, which I'm doing for the first time in years. I can and will clean the house. In fact, I enjoy doing it. But when I want to, not on someone else's command or terms or timeline, and certainly not when they refuse to help. The quiet, no more TVs or music blaring in the background 16 to 18 hours a day. I have the whole bed to myself and can sprawl. And I can sleep when I want to, for as long as I feel like it. No interruptions, no drama, no smoking indoors. Him. Life's better. A lot better. However, I refuse to date anyone or even consider the possibility for at least a year. I need alone time to get to know myself again and grow as a person. You can't really love someone well if you don't love yourself enough. That can also make you vulnerable to unhealthy people or relationships. Lesson learned. Story 4. What kind of person I am. I'd love to go up to Vermont some weekend. I live in Massachusetts. We don't do that kind of thing. Wait a minute, I'm not we anymore. I can be the kind of person who does that. My finances are a mess. We never could keep them under control. Yes, but not that I'm not we. Maybe I can. I hate weekends. All we ever do is chores and errands. I can't ever have fun. Wrong. I can structure my life however I want to. And it turns out a lot of those chores and errands were her creation, not necessities. Gotta keep the apartment spotless. No, that was her requirement. I can be the kind of person who keeps it in good enough condition, not perfect condition. It's a place to live, not a showroom. And most importantly, I'm depressed, anxious, stressed, and overwhelmed all the time. And the world always seems to go against us. Nope, that was us. I'm the kind of person who can change how I feel and take on what the world throws at me. It's utterly surprising how held back I was in my marriage and didn't even know it. Story 5. I didn't think I had such a problem with drinking, but turns out it was huge. But his own drinking eclipsed mine, and I didn't realize it was such a big deal. I am now 102 days into sobriety, and I feel amazing. I thought he was the love of my life and the best person I'll ever meet. Then I started seeing how he truly was. He still says I made a huge mistake by breaking things up, but he's showing his true colors. Not only to me, but to everyone around him, and people are starting to open their eyes. I thought I would never be able to be a vegetarian and that I was doomed to be a very overweight woman. I thought my body was enormous and horrible. As soon as I left, I started making every change I had ever wanted to make to feel better. Now I'm a vegetarian. I've lost a bunch of weight without working out, just eating slightly healthier than before, which he absolutely forbade me to do. I don't hate my body. I'm a completely different person now. I am who I choose to be. Nobody's mocking that I work at a pizza place. Nobody's holding me back from going on adventures, trying new things, new foods, clothes, friends. I'm currently working with my psychiatrist to slow down my meds, and I've gone from 6 to 7 a day to just 3. I feel like I was born again. I'm happy and I'm grateful that I could get out of that relationship. Every day I see a little bit more of how and controlling he was and how blind I was for the last 5 years. And it feels awesome knowing that now I'm finally okay. Story 6. How expensive it is to live. I can't live with other people, and living on your own is just excruciatingly expensive. How it would take so long to start actually moving on. It's been 3 years this August since we split, and I'm still pretty distraught about the whole thing. How much he used to do. I'm just an appalling adult. How hard it is to find someone new. Everyone grew up while me and my ex were just being dumb kids, and whilst she had a family job and support to fall back on while she learned how to be an adult, I had to move away where I knew no one and had nothing. Turns out that women want a dude who has friends and a social life and a job and confidence and is financially stable. It just feels like my life is over, and I messed it all up over some silly girl who never really cared about me in the first place. Story 7. Dating. It's absolutely mind-boggling and frustrating how quickly the dating game changes. The concept remains the same, but the old tricks that used to work no longer work. I wasn't married for ages, and in the short time that I went through my marriage and into my divorce, the dating scene had evolved. When I met her, it was still the go out and meet people phase. When I was single again, it had evolved completely to online dating. Now it's apps and swiping and things of that nature. It's no longer the wholesome act of actually meeting and talking to people. You're judged before you even get a chance to represent yourself. It's print and a picture that gets you a date now, not actions and personality. If you're lucky enough to get a text, then it goes into messaging before you even get to hear what this person sounds like. And hopefully, she's being honest about what she actually looks like. Because let me tell you, there have been a few surprises there too. Guys, if you don't like online dating, then don't do it. The bars, clubs, restaurants, zoos, museums, gyms, dog parks, beaches are all still there. Story 8. I went from dating pre-apps to post-apps. It was the worst thing. Somehow, in the decade between 2005 and 2015, people had nearly entirely unlearned social skills. Also, people were so inauthentic because to date successfully, a glossy social media presence meant more than actually being a better person in real life. The amount of people I met that were totally different from how they presented themselves online was incredible. People were never so phony before. Before, I would meet people naturally, through social connections or random encounters. Then I realized the world had flipped upside down. Talking to a stranger in a bar or some other social situation was treated as suspicious or creepy. But any kind of online contact, no matter how odd or weird, seemed acceptable. Say hi to someone sitting next to you in a pub and their friends would act as if you had done something inappropriate. However, random people would ask me for pics or send unsolicited pictures my way without a care in the world. To this day, I've never texted inappropriately. I find it frankly ridiculous when you can meet in real life easily. Generally, I pity people who have never had a relationship before Facebook and Tinder. Also, it takes the fun out of relationships. It's like playing a game in easy mode or with hacks. Where's the challenge in taking a selfie and swiping until you find someone enough to say, fine, you'll do? Story 9. It wasn't so much of a long term. We dated off and on all the way through high school, and up until I was 22 years old. She would date me for a while and then leave me for the same guy, who she said she was afraid for his soul if she wasn't there to guide him all the time. She broke my heart so many times, and I became one of those guys that looks for something wrong with every girl after her, so I wouldn't get attached and then hurt. Anyway, the last time I ever saw this silly thing, We went out for dinner, as usual. We eat, we finish, and as she's wiping away the last crumbs of the meal I purchased for us, from her mouth, she tells me once again, I'm breaking up with you. I'm going back to Dean. I looked at her for what seemed like ages, controlling my anger. I finally said, all right, but excused myself to go to the bathroom. I went out the side door of the restaurant and left her there to pay the check and find a way home. We were from a very rural southern area, so it was a 40-minute drive to a city of any size, with decent restaurants. I imagine her dad was more angry with me than she was, which is a shame. He was a real nice dude. Sorry, Mr. So-and-so. She was a movie star. Beautiful. Still is. But guys, too often the really attractive girls are treated as special all their life, and they're truly insufferable. They're not worth the time you get looking at their beauty because they're so ugly on the inside and selfish that they start to look ugly also. Not all beautiful people are like that, of course, but so many of them are. I regret that I let her spur me on women for a long time. I mistreated or hurt feelings of so many girls because I wanted to hurt them before they hurt me. I sincerely wish I had been a wiser boy or man, and I truly have sentenced myself for years for the sweet ladies that I hurt for no reason. I became as bad as Judy. No person is worth losing your soul over. I'm pretty sure now that she just used me for a vacation from Dean each time. I'd always worked since I was a young kid. I was a go-getter, a hustler. I always had money. Because my parents wouldn't give me money, I had to earn everything I got. This was in the 70s. She would call me up crying, begging me to come and get her and take her away. I would always relent and forgive her. I told her once, towards the end, that Dean was a bum. He was always going to be a bum. That if she hooked her wagon to his team, she was going to live in a mobile home all of her life. With him on welfare, you're never going to have anything. You're going to have a scramble for every little thing for your child. All of this came true. Every single word I told her. I take no satisfaction in being right. 40 years of time passing tends to give you a little perspective on the human condition. Her daughter did almost win America's Got Talent. Seriously. They lived off of what their daughter made for singing since she was a child. Dean never worked much. Their daughter is still supporting them. Story 10. Sort of a story of my life in response to this question. I hope that's okay. I was in a long-term relationship for around 5 years, and it was rough at the end. We dated from high school into college, and those are years where you're meant to find yourself. But we instead grew together. He was a special person to me, but he triggered my anxiety. College was a rough time for me, and I was constantly calling my dad asking if it was the right choice for me. My boyfriend began to rely on me for everything. So I would be handling my emotions and his, even though I begged him to handle his own matters. Like write down his assignments instead of having me remember them for him, or he would bottle emotions until they came out on me. All that is to say, intense anxiety and panic attacks became part of who I was. It was insane to be able to breathe when we weren't together. Unfortunately, I did miss him a lot, even though we weren't a good match, which made me make a lot of self-destructive decisions and was terribly reckless. Funnily enough, I'm now a person that has gone from extremely high stress to as careless as they come. I met and married my perfect husband, and he tells me I'm the most confident person he has met. I hadn't felt that way with my high school partner. Maybe it was age, but honestly, I think it was because I had a period in my life to go a little crazy and figured out what mattered to me. If anyone reads all of this, I appreciate it. Sometimes it's nice to talk about someone who played a big part in your life for a period of time. Story 11. A lot of people here need to never have children. Relationships can be constricting, and like some have said, you don't know how much of your freedoms you're going to be giving up when entering a relationship. Honeymoon phase ensues, blah blah. All of a sudden you're asking permission here and there to do basic me-time things, and you think, how did I get here? Who am I? I think most people, not all, are extremely selfish without even knowing it. Our whole biological agenda as a race is to procreate and further the survival of our species. It's why we want to be intimate. It's why we like big, tall, handsome, strong boys. But the idea of freedom to be one's own master and control of all the aspects of life is very, very attractive, especially more so once you've lost it. I'm married and have children, and both things are definitely a trap. Granted, one of the most rewarding and heartwarming traps you can be in, but a trap all the same. Think hard before you get into having some babies, because it is 1,000% more constricting than a relationship, and if you have even a shred of moral fiber, you'll want to commit yourself to always altering your life and schedule for the needs of your children. I do entertain the idea of going hermit in my old age. Once my kids are grown and have the ability to live their independent lives, I think about the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Make your contribution to society, fulfill your sacrifice, and go out and enjoy solitude. Who knows though? Relationships, marriage, children can all do some pretty wild stuff to your psychology. I think everyone should live for themselves entirely until at least age 30. At least for me, I live with some regret for never having done that. Having a bachelor single life of any kind. It definitely changes the perception of how I view the trap. So anyway, yeah, I ranted a bit. Maybe we'll strike a chord with someone out there though. Story 12. I had a long-term relationship with a person with a drinking problem. I was surprised to come up for air and realize just how screwed up the final couple of years of that relationship had been. More broadly, in that relationship and previous relationships involving cohabitation, I ceded most of the decoration and look of our home to my partner. And between relationships, I would default to a highly utilitarian style. After my ex and I split 2.5 years ago, I decided to change that up. I decided that if I was going to live in a space, I would definitely claim it as my own through decoration. That took a lot more effort than I expected, not just to find what looked good, but to discover what my style really was. Another interesting thing for me was that I had forgotten how to date. Not the whole Tinder or OkCupid or online dating thing, but more along the lines of how to go out to dinner or other social activity with a single person of the opposite gender, relax, be myself, and enjoy the ebb and flow of conversation. I ended up doing a few date-like activities with a newly single female friend. We were not particularly interested in each other romantically, but going out with her and doing things helped me unwind and get to a better place in my own head. Finally, the strangest thing was reaching a point where I was ready to date and find a relationship again. I made a couple efforts at dating, but nothing really stuck. I withdrew from dating for about 8 months. Not in the r/nice guy sense, but in the sense that I was not finding what I needed in dating. I spent a bit of time finding myself and preparing for the idea I might be alone for the rest of my life. That last was a scary idea, but I also had to accept that it might happen and accept that I would be okay if I did not find anyone. Once I was in that headspace, I was ready to date again. Though I had some failures, I forced myself to look for the right person. The right person and I met just a couple months into that adventure. She's not perfect, I'm not perfect, but we both sensed something special from the first time we met. Both of us have had some pretty awful adventures in dating and romance, but as they said in Rent, she and I have baggage that goes together. We've been together for just over 1.5 years, and it is probably the best relationship I've had as an adult. I hope it goes on for quite a while longer. Story 13. I married young. I met my ex-wife when I was in college, and we split when I was 37, having raised 3 children to teenagehood. I'm 45 now, and my kids are adults. I've spent the last 8 years enjoying freedom of a sort I never knew existed. Honestly, the thing that surprised me most at first was how okay I was. I thought my world had ended when my wife a guy and left me, but after a month or so of sulking, I just picked myself up, dusted myself off, and got on with life, and actually it was pretty good. I don't think I'll ever marry again. I can't really imagine even wanting to live with a partner for more than a couple of years. I love my independence. I get to decide what to do and who to be. The only problem, really, is that dating is quite tricky. That's mostly because I have no desire to marry and or procreate. Most women my age seem to want babies, and most of the rest seem to be clinically insane. Ah well. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 14. In my relationship, I had trouble being apart from her. If I was out with my friends, I had to text and let her know when I was going to be home or where I was, rather than just chill with my pals and feel like I could be in the moment. I always felt one foot out the door. She had problems sleeping if I wasn't home, so I would make myself miss out on parties, late night hangouts, and friend time to be home for her. She didn't even have a ton of friends she'd hang with, so I found myself prioritizing time with her than with my own friends. And I do have to take responsibility that I was the one who made these decisions to deprioritize keeping up my friendships. By the time the relationship ended, I found it hard to hang with friends again. My closest friends all had coupled off and had kids. I had a lot more time alone. I'd gone so long with one best friend that when it was all gone, I had a lot of great people in my life, but no super close friends left who hadn't moved on to their next phases of their lives. That was tough, and still is to this day, to really have those close friendships. It's a lot easier when you're younger from my experiences, something I still work on. Story 15. I was with my girlfriend and eventually wife for nearly 10 years. From age 22 to 25 when she left me, and it was hard. I solved my short-term problems by running away from my hometown to another 3 hours away to work with some old friends I had in the area. I didn't even tell my parents. I just packed my stuff and left. And the first thing that hit me was the free time. Me and my ex-wife were both gamers. I got her into them when we were still teenagers. and suddenly I had time to game and meet up online regularly with my small group of friends. It felt like it'd been forever since we last were able to. When I finally went on my first date 7 months after my wife left me, I discovered that I got too used to the single life. The girl I was out with kept asking what I was doing when I checked my phone, or an alert dinged on my car and it just irked me. I realized I got used to the privacy of the single life, and this girl wanting to visit my apartment in the first date and asking what I was doing just annoyed me. Never went past the first date, but I was surprised at just how quickly I'd gotten used to living on my own again. Story 16. It was 6 years ago, and I had a long-term friendship. We had been together since 5th grade. He was my true friend. I knew his family well and vice versa. We knew everything about each other. We were like brothers. Both of us were not straight. I came out first, and like a year later, he did too. We went through tough times, like when my grandma passed away, then his dad, and then the worst news I've ever received was when he told me he's HIV positive. I was super supportive. I helped him buy special medicine in Mexico, as retrovirals are not given by the government. One day out of the blue, he contacted me in Messenger and said he doesn't want me to contact him anymore. He didn't want to know anything about me, practically ending everything there. It was horrible knowing the person I most trusted, loved, and cared about I felt vulnerable. Still feel. The time it hurt the most was when I got a date and I was so happy. I wanted to tell someone and I automatically dialed his number. I wanted to tell him the good news, but when I realized what it did, I hung up fast. After that is when I started to feel alone, even if I had a partner. For me, it's hard to forget 14 years of my life. I really feel like I lost a brother. Looks like his old friend decided to take the out with the old, in with a new approach to life. And by old, he meant him. Ouch. Story 17. How wonderful it was to not answer anyone but myself. I was no longer someone's babysitter. I could focus on me and the things I wanted. I used to do everything for my ex, including making sure his homework got done and turned in, making sure he showed up to work and got to and from work, taking him to soccer games 2 hours away every Sunday for 40 Sundays out of the year, making sure he got fed, making sure he showed up to family events, and making sure he got to doctor's appointments. It was so nice to break up that almost all of my anxiety disappeared. I was asked to not speak to other males in our relationship. I stopped hanging out with all of my friends. I let myself go in a personal sense to make sure he had everything he needed in life because I didn't want to be with a failure. Now I'm happy. Story 18. I realized how much my personality had negatively changed from being with a horrible person. I was a completely different person. I had to completely rebuild myself in my entire life. I'd neglected myself and driven my own life into the ground. I realized I had developed no hobbies or lost them. I'd just been consumed with making them happy. I realized there were a lot of things I liked that was made to believe I didn't like. I had so much less anxiety, inconveniences, and mental turmoil. I felt single when I was with that particular person. I'm hoping my next relationship will allow me to keep my individuality and maintain a good balance. Developing healthy habits within yourself, life, and making sure you pick a healthy person next time is challenging, especially after so much mistreatment and being made to believe you had tons of issues. It's very refreshing, though, to finally feel normal, happier, develop hobbies and a personality. Story 19. I'm actually going through this right now. My fiancé of 3 years left me in December. It was kind of out of nowhere, but also wasn't. That part is really hard to explain. It's kind of turned my life upside down. The hardest part isn't even losing her as a significant other. It's that, for me, our lives were kind of intertwined. We were in an international relationship, and it'd only been a few weeks since she went home for her 8th visit to my country, and she told me she couldn't do the distance anymore. I'm sure there are other reasons, but I'll probably never know what they are. I learned how to quickly go between the metric and freedom systems quickly and still have to remind myself that I don't have to adjust for the time difference anymore. I was used to her being up way before me on days when I work early, so I knew I could call her on the way to work, just little stuff that suddenly isn't so little when you realize what it meant to you. At the same time, during the last visit, I started to develop some unusual health issues. Turns out it is stemming from a serious condition under 2 of my teeth and has potentially been messing with my brain, causing me to do all kinds of crazy stuff, especially in my sleep. Dealing with that has honestly helped me, in a bizarre way, to get through the whole thing. As right now, I need to be concerned with not ending. I'm on a bottomless prescription of antibiotics and have surgery scheduled for March 4th. That tends to keep one's mind pretty busy. So it is bad, but it could be worse. Whatever things in the relationship you took advantage of and didn't think twice about, those will hurt the worst. Having someone not love you as an abstract anymore is way easier to deal with than the person you texted every morning for years not responding anymore. Story 20. It was them not living directly in constant stress. Don't get me wrong, I was sad, I was devastated, and heartbroken. But ultimately, that relationship was literally draining me. Carrying around someone else's secrets, walking on eggshells, it went from lying and gaslighting to full-on mistreatment by the end. I still live in fear, and I wonder if that will ever change. But I don't go to work crying anymore or get nasty text messages calling me names because I didn't wake up for work on time. By the time that was over, I felt broken because I watched this person just devolve into trash. I had no respect for him, and he was full-on mistreating me. I know a couple of things now with absolute certainty. I'd rather never be in a relationship again than be in that one again. I don't anymore want children, and I'm not ready to give up. Truth be told, I'm not very likable or much of a people person, so really maybe relationships aren't for me. I don't know, there might be something else. I guess I still have to figure that out. I stay busy, work full-time, single parent, go to school as well, so I don't have a lot of time. I'm forced to keep moving, which is great. I pray it pays off. Story 21. Honestly, I'm still reeling pretty badly about it. A 4-year relationship ended last year. What surprised me the most is how much I hate sleeping alone. She used to sprawl out and I'd have to constantly move, and at that time I was so annoyed by it. But now that I sleep alone, I realized how much I love having someone next to me. And honestly, as time goes on, it just gets harder and harder. But to stray away from the pity party a bit, I think just how hard it is to meet people. I don't know if that's due to my outlook and how I've been spending my time, but I forgot how hard dating was. For context, I'm 27. Something positive though, how much better my diet is and how little I now overeat. We used to pig out and we're constantly eating out, but now that I'm alone, I don't snack as much. Eat at more reasonable times, etc. Another one is how liberating it was. I realized how much energy I was putting into making someone else happy that I forgot about my own needs. Now I can say, without any sarcasm or existential spite, how happy I am that I've focused on myself. I now have a stable job that I love, a place of my own, financial stability, and time to myself. I wasn't able to do that with my partner. I was only with her for 4 years, but that was still a long time where I wasn't actually happy with my own life. I always had to think of everything as us and what is our life like. Now I get to think about what makes me happy and what I want my life to be. You only get one chance, and I don't want to waste it. Story 22. When my last serious girlfriend broke up with me almost a year ago, it felt as if a giant weight had been lifted off my chest, a weight that I didn't know existed until after it happened. I felt free. I didn't have to endlessly try and please someone who couldn't be pleased. I didn't have to spend all my time making someone happy who continuously made me feel unappreciated. I was able to once again go out and do my thing. I read, watched sports, and hung out with friends. How relaxed and at ease I was. It was like a weight lifted from my shoulders because she was always mad about something. I had to walk on eggshells around her. On my own, I was able to go anywhere I wanted, whenever I wanted, without her accusing me of cheating. I could stay up late without her guilt-tripping me into lying in bed next to her wide awake and able to sleep. I could go for a midnight drive and park and watch the stars without worrying about upsetting her. The total freedom made me realize how much I allowed her jealousy and insecurity to dictate my choices. Being single over the past year has been great, and I'm not willing to give it up anytime soon. I've moved to a bigger city and went out on a trip to Asia since the breakup. Every day has felt like a new adventure. I've been lucky enough to find a relationship where I still have freedom. She understands if I need time to myself and doesn't get jealous or insecure because she knows who I'm coming home to. Her. There's no time in life to deal with jealousy. Word of advice, find happiness in yourself and enjoy your own life. Worry about someone only if they can supplement your happiness and make your life even better. Find your own happiness first. Story 23. I'm there right now. Wife of 35 years. My first girlfriend, truth be told. Walked out 2 months ago because of, well, call it issues, existential crisis, whatever. She just reached a point where she couldn't deal with me or the kids and moved out with some other guy. She's not doing well, and I'm worried all the time about her. Stay in touch, but she's barely coping, not improving or feeling any better so far. The mere thought of meeting me makes her ill. Nausea, stomach pains, vertigo. It's like I've been converted to antimatter all of a sudden. She refuses to help. I'm giving her time to fall on her feet and start dealing with whatever is eating her, but I'm not optimistic, and I won't wait forever. I'm not getting younger. And the other guy, I'll have to admit I have trouble stomaching. I loathe him like leprosy. I believe he's taking advantage of her. So where does that leave me? I'm still open to her coming back if she can work out her issues, but I'm also opening up to the possibility that she may not. Either way, I've obviously acquired traits and made decisions which make living with me difficult, So I'm working on those. Yes, I judge myself, constructively and critically, and change. I'll have to work out my wants if I want to be livable, whether my wife gets her life together and considers coming back, or whether I find another woman to rebuild my life with. But here's the thing. I'm taking control of my life and improving it, while what my wife does, or not, is entirely out of my hands. That is liberating in a way. She'll come back, or she won't, and there's nothing more I can do about it than to stop the fall rains. So I might as well concentrate on what's ahead of me, and make the best of it. Another thing I'm coming to realize is just how much and how long my wife was not doing so well and how many hang-ups she had. I was always working around. I'm free of that now. And I'm doing stuff for myself I'd forgotten I'd even set aside. I started working out, picked up trekking, lost 30 pounds, gotta use that grief for something, and started growing some muscle. And I smile all the time. For no reason, just in case a reason pops up or I make some as I go. And I engage people. Open up, work at striking up conversation. The women at work are beginning to notice me and pass comments. Apparently the working out and the weight loss are improving my looks. And this fall, I'll see where things stand. I might have to relearn dating, I guess. Story 24. Finding my own independence and happiness. We were together for 13 years and I truly didn't think I could do simple tasks that we or he had done previously. Something as simple as setting an alarm for work in the morning. I had a ton of doubt and worry once it ended. Very happy to say I'm over that piece. I had sacrificed my own happiness to try and make him happy, which isn't fair to me. In the end, it still wasn't enough. He will always be a sad individual and I can't fix that. It's not my responsibility. Also, moving on has been surprisingly easier than I thought it would be. To a point where I sometimes wonder if I'm doing it wrong or if it should take longer. I'm happy. So figure just going with the flow and not sitting in that thought too long is probably best for me. Story 25. How freeing it is to not be codependent and meshed anymore. I do stuff for myself. Have more friends, do way more things like events with friends, going back to college, sitting on the sofa for the afternoon without someone sighing at me. Not being judged as boring, because I don't want to spend hours every weekend out drinking. Great, no stress. Do whatever you want, when you want, whatever you want. Imagine getting out of bed to go to the bathroom and get asked, where are you going? Or things like, why you shaved? Or 4:10 p.m., what you were doing. You normally get home at 4:05 p.m. It's a little harder than I imagined when I knew the relationship was ending, but way better than I ever thought it could be. After years of relations here and there, I learned that after a while I get drained because I don't want to be the center of attention. I want to be a compliment to my significant others and the other way. To the point that every time my fiancé tells me I'm the most important thing or person to her, I respond with, no, you are the most important thing or person in your life. She gets a little mad or confused every time I say it, but I really mean it. I hope someday she will understand why I say it. Story 26. My experience is colored by the fact that my relationships ended badly, mostly being cheated on. The biggest surprise was how freeing it felt and how easy it was. I could sleep in, stay up late, eat when, where, and what I wanted. None of my decisions had a second person to consider or pander to. If I wanted to do something or couldn't afford something, I had no other person's feelings to consider. Certainly, there were an uncomfortable space left by my ex's absence. While freeing, that comfortable presence can be very nice and reassuring. There were a lot of positives, but I was surprised by how much I missed physical affection. Before I was with her, I had convinced the world and myself I wasn't a touchy-feely person. With her, we were almost always touching. Story 27. When I officially ended my relationship, I felt like I finally got my life back on track. I realized how much of my time and energy I dedicated to his life and his goals and plans. Once I left, I became consistent with my strength training. I graduated with my degree, finally, and I had to completely clear all the old energy associated with that old chapter of my life. My life drastically transformed. I got a new job, an amazing new position. Now I'm moving to a different city in my state and it feels brand new. Life feels refreshed and focused on myself, finally. Story 28. I made my life as busy as possible to prevent spiraling. I was in grad school at the time, and I ended up getting a full-time job after the breakup and moving to a new city, all while continuing my degree. I didn't really have time to feel bad for myself because I had so much on my plate. Also, when I'd get really down, I'd browse public dating profiles on sites like OkCupid or POF. I didn't have an account because I had zero interest in actually dating anyone, but it helped to find profiles of people that made me realize that there are other people I might be compatible with who aren't my ex. I also took a long, hard look at myself and realized I didn't really like who I'd become in that relationship. I made a list of things that I could do that would get me closer to being someone I was proud of being. It helped to give me some concrete life goals that didn't revolve around my former relationship. It took a long time, but eventually the weeks where I felt hopelessly depressed came further and further apart. I still think about my former relationship from time to time, but I can recognize all of the flaws that made it untenable. I've moved on now, and I found someone who is a much better person than my ex. Finding someone else to focus those interests on also helped to shut down the last remaining bits of sadness I had over the breakup. Story 29. First, how much of a relief it was. The real break was when I stopped trying to figure out or think about what she was feeling, or what she would think about anything that I did. It was a huge weight off, like a whole analytical process that no longer mattered. Second, that she was fine without me, and actually a decent person. And so was I. That I could do everything on my own. I was super codependent to my ex and totally lost myself in the relationship. The other side of that is that I was the one doing everything for the majority of the time anyways, because he'd take forever to do anything I asked. So I would just do it. I felt unsupported and alone, and by the time I left, I felt like I was less than a roommate in my own home. Afterwards, I was freed and felt less alone than I had in years. I took the time to rediscover myself and learn who I was again. This took longer, of course, but realizing that we were both good and fairly normal people who were actually better when apart, that was a good thing to know. We get along now like old friends who don't need to talk every day or week, but who know each other well enough to have some mutual respect, in spite of everything. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.